Oh, yeah. Yeah, no.
Is everybody here on my side? And we'll have some more too. But that's kind of my job.
Yeah, I know.
It wouldn't be Brady if it wasn't Brady. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. I know that we might have some people still come in. This is also going to be live streamed. So just really quick before we have our good friend and Omaha Tribal Elder, Dr. Rudy Mitchell, give an opening prayer. I want to thank Kyle Finley. Kyle has been consistently a good ally of our Native American Studies program, a good friend, and he's always willing to live stream these events for us, for people that are remote and our relatives who can't be with us in person. So thank you for that, Kyle. And now it's my honor and privilege to turn this over to Dr. Rudy Mitchell, the Omaha Tribal Nation. If you could please stand.
Aho Margada Uta the Yati, which the Uta Atio, Omaha Jaja Rivita, Sihitiva, Waka Jaja Rivita, Dr. Rudy Mitchell, it Kasabe Edem of Leho, Omaha Edem of Leho. It's customary in the Omaha culture to, as elders, to introduce themselves in our native language, and that's what I did out of respect to my tribe and to my Native American people. At this time, I'd like you all to bow your heads with me. You know, we have a lot of uncertainty in our lives today, and there's a lot of people we need to pray for with various situations going on in their lives, especially our Indian people who are facing hardship, sickness, you know, with diabetes and all this. So please remember them. Daddy Obakanda, Daddy Jesus, the Abuska, the Akadin. Walker than Mati Dadiho, Sham Ukita Mati Dadiho, Ukita wa Uchada la Elega, Sham Nudahanga Brady Santi, la Elega Dadiho. Father, as we come together this evening, we ask you that you would guide and be with us and to help us in the lecture tonight that Janelle will share with us, Father. Pray that our people will have better health, not only our people, but other people as well, Father. Father, I pray for world peace. Pray for our country here. Pray that somehow that we can all get along and live together with one another. Pray for all the different tribes that are represented tonight, their tribal leaders, the program directors, and most of our elders and the children, Father. Father, I have a special request that you would bless us with good health, each and every one of us that are here tonight, Father, our families, extended families, and the different tribes that we represent, and the different nationalities that are here. Father, we ask this all in your Son's name, Jesus. Amen.
And thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Really appreciate that. I'd like to invite Douglas Esau up to deliver a welcoming song. We're making this journey and start things off in a really good way here. And none of this would be possible, the John Trudell lecture, if it wasn't for the Trudell family giving us permission, working with us, and really supporting us, and it means a lot. And someone who I've come to respect immensely, as a good friend, is Tim Trudell. And I'm inviting Tim to say a few words on behalf of the Trudell family.
Help me to Kiapi, Hataye to Washte, Timi Makiapi, Tate Topa, Hoye Kia Pi Wichasta, Ichiapi. Hello, all my relatives. Good evening. My name is Tim. They call me Sending His Voice from Four Directions, man. On behalf of my brothers, sisters, our children, John's children, and their families, and all of our relatives, Wopita, thank you to the University of Nebraska, Omaha, for continuing to honor our brother John, who dedicated decades working for equality and fair treatment of Indigenous peoples. The Trudell Lecture Series occupies a large space in our hearts, and thank you, Brady, for ensuring John's legacy and his story continue. We're honored to have our Isanti relative, Janelle Whipple, speak tonight. Our family has a deep respect for her. And thank you to the sponsors of tonight's lecture, the Goldstein Center for Human Rights, the Goldstein Family Community Chair in Human Rights, and the following UNO departments, the Native American Studies, Religious Studies, Political Science, and Sociology, Anthropology, and also thank you to the UNO English Department's Creative Nonfiction Writing Program. Again, thank you, UNO, for continuing to honor John's story. And most of all, thank you, relatives, for spending your evening with us. And as our brother was famous for saying, it's a good day to be Indigenous. Thank you, Brady.
All right, thank you, Tim. So, thank you for being with us, everyone, this evening. This is actually the fourth John Trudell lecture in Native American Studies that we've been able to hold since the height of the pandemic. And I appreciate, this is not just me, I have so much help, and I really appreciate everybody throughout the years. It's been a very odd existence since 2020, to say the least, for all of us, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. So my name is Brady Santi, and I am the director of UNO's Native American Studies program. My home department is in religious studies. I'm a citizen of the Lakota Ojibwe tribal nation out of Hayward, Wisconsin, and we also possess Bad River Ojibwe ancestry. I'm going to offer up a brief land acknowledgement, but it goes with the understanding that all universities need to strive to increase Native student recruitment, meet their needs, build responsible courses for them academically, assist them financially, and increase Native faculty membership. So on this occasion, it is appropriate to acknowledge that UNO occupies the traditional treaty lands of the Omaha and Otoe Missouri tribal nations. We also want to express our respect to the Ponca tribe of Nebraska, the Winnebago tribe of Nebraska, the Santee Dakota of Nebraska, and the 170 other tribes that are represented just within the Omaha area alone. Okay. Now, our Native Studies program, we started out in 1992. And we're proud and fortunate to have a wonderful student body and Native community, as evidenced by this tonight. We have faculty who represent a wide range of disciplines, such as history, religious studies, field of federal Indian law, tribal nation building, political science, English, public administration, anthropology, gerontology, global indigenous studies, archaeology, medical humanities, and so forth. So it's, the list can go on and on. And I want to echo what Tim said here a moment ago. Tonight's festivities would not be possible if not for the very generous assistance of the Goldstein Center for Human Rights and the Goldstein Family Community Chair in Human Rights. We sincerely appreciate their continual support. We also appreciate the support from religious studies, sociology and anthropology, political science, and the English department creative nonfiction program. So I'll wrap this up shortly. I'm going to introduce why everybody's here this evening. So it's my great honor to introduce our speaker this evening, Janelle Whipple, who's a citizen of the Santee Dakota, possesses Northern Ponca heritage, and she's also a current doctoral student focusing on leadership studies at Gonzaga University. She also holds a master's degree in tribal administration and governance from the University of Minnesota, Duluth. Janelle's scholarship and community work emphasizes tribal treaty rights, federal Indian law, tribal government, tribal nation building, cultural revitalization, and Indian gaming expertise. Additionally, Janelle maintains an abiding interest and engagement with traditional ecological knowledge, particularly with plant-based medicines. As Native peoples, our understandings of personhood is expansive, and so it includes more than just human beings. We understand plants and animals as relatives with whom we have kinship obligations towards. These important relationships with plants and animals in the natural world depend on being good relatives through reciprocity. I'm really glad that I've had the fortune to get to know Janelle the past year. She is well known and beloved as a community member throughout urban and reservation communities. She's currently doing an excellent job teaching a class for our program called Tribal Nation Building, and I've enjoyed working with her. So it's my pleasure now to turn this over to Janelle and her presentation.
Test. Hamadakipi. Chante washte na pe uchusa Dakota Traze wa Kianskumi demie na washichu ia jina wepo makia pe esante makoche hamataha na wapeku de ban hamataha madakiase. Good evening, everyone. My name is Janelle Whipple. I am from Santee, Nebraska, but as Brady said, my father was the late Fred Leroy. He was known in the Omaha community, and he helped restore the Ponca tribe of Nebraska. And then my grandmother is Zichangu. She is a Valandra from the Rosebud. So we have community ties to Rosebud, and we don't get to visit as often as we would like to. I am honored to be a speaker for the John Trudell lecture, and starting off, I'm going to start my timer because I could talk all night, so we got to stay on task here, and then we got Q&A, so starting my timer. So I actually went to Hawaii for an NCORE conference. We got to present on, one was our Nahashni program, and I'll talk about that towards the end because you will see some slides with our Nahashni Summer Youth Program that we did in Washington for Washington State University. But when I was in Hawaii, I'd seen this in one of the restaurants, and it said, invest in your health, eat your food as medicine, otherwise you'll need medicine as food. And when I talk about my story, I'm going to talk about why that really hit my heart. So I thought that was a great quote. So about me, when I'm going to go through this, I'll tell you a funny story. So I have an AA from Nebraska Indian Community College, and I say that because I am proud to be a tribal college alumni. I have a bachelor's from University of, give a shout out to the tribal college kids because they don't get recognized like they deserve to be. I have a BA from University of Nebraska, Omaha, so as Brady said, I am teaching. I am an alumni here, so it feels really good to be presenting here. I have a master's from Minnesota, Duluth. That's all we did is tribal administration, government, federal Indian law, and I am proud that my thesis advisor is one of the first board regents native to ever be for Minnesota. So Todd Johnson, I give you a shout out. I am a fourth year student at Gonzaga in leadership studies, but my focus is on Dakota leadership styles and the kinship system. And I focus right now a lot on women due to protocols, but I eventually know that I'll probably have to get permission to talk about men leadership styles. But that's my emphasis is Dakota leadership, kinship, our birth order, all the things that go within our culture. So the reason I put why that is 22 years of an academic journey. I'm going to be 40 in May, and I started at Creighton University. My classmates are back there, all three. I have been on academic probation 3 or 4 times. I got suspended once. I failed a couple times. Every time somebody told me we knew he was coming back, we didn't know when. But now they don't say nothing. I am going to start my dissertation next semester, so I'm pretty scared and excited. So I put that there for any advisors, instructors, and students we have in the audience. If you fail, dust yourself back off and keep going. And just keep going and going, and it doesn't matter when you complete the finish line as long as you complete it. So I am adjuncted right now. For UNO, I'm teaching the Tribal Nations building, and then for NACC, I'm teaching tribal leadership and management, and I'm currently a Head Start teacher at Educare in Winnebago. 2 different spectrums, right? We got the babies, we got the 3, the 4, and the 5-year-olds, and then we got the college graduates. So, this is milkweed, and I love this picture because for some reason, milkweed really makes me happy. There's a lot you can do with that plant. You know, a lot of times with the buds, you make a soup, but I was really fortunate that they had a Dakota elder do a presentation of a live webinar. And she brought up the different ways you could do it. You know, she said that she deep fries the full bloom, deep fries it about 2 or 3 times, and then she eats it. And then you'll see a picture later on with the sprouts. They said that those go into good salads. And one thing that she had said to me is she said, everybody says, oh my God, milkweed's poisonous, don't eat it. And what she said on the webinar really struck me. She said, at some point, everything is poisonous to your system until you adapt to it. And she said, you have to process it the right way. She's like, but it's our relative. It takes care of us in all aspects and all forms. And so the milkweed really holds something to my soul. So I get really happy to see it, and I'm experimenting with it. But it goes into my plant medicine story. So I grew up in a very unique, blessed home. My grandparents were very strong Christians. My grandfather was supposed to be an Episcopal minister until he got sent out to World War II. My grandmother was a very strong Catholic. Although she knew her history, she told us about the Dakota 38. One of them was her grandfather. She stressed the importance, and she herself dabbed into plant medicine, even though she didn't make that known that she had plant medicine. I watched it growing up. She was very keen on bitterroot and bare root. And my mother, which I'll get into later on when we talk about the things of it, but my mother changed the cycle. We had alcoholism in our family. And when she got pregnant with my sister, she had told everybody, I don't want my children around alcohol. She is a first-generation student. She is alumni of UNL. She got her degree in elementary ed. And she was the first Native American teacher in the OPS system. I found that out when I was at my last job. Yeah, Linda's Boston, by the way. So I know she has some friends here. So I grew up in a very strong foundational home, but she brought us up in a traditional way. My grandma was a fluent Lakota speaker, so they had exposed us to this strong cultural tie. My whole life I grew up, I was a Dakota. So my plant medicine story, though, actually starts in 2018. In 2018, I came back from a job from University of South Dakota back to the regs. I started working at their Head Start program. I had to take a physical. I knew I was really big, but I didn't know how big I was until I got on the scale. They had said, okay, your physical is really bad. You're 311 pounds. You have diabetes. You have high blood pressure. You have all these things wrong with you. Like, you're not healthy. You need to change it. So, of course, IHS, right, they put you on all the meds. And so I said, well, what about, can't you reverse things? Can't you change it? This isn't my fate, taking pills for the rest of my life. And then they kind of looked at me like I wasn't going to change anything. I wasn't going to do anything about it. And so I proved them wrong. So I'm a scholar by nature, so I started researching plants. I start researching what is diabetes, what is blood pressure. Like, how do I fix myself? And so I started reading that different plants, there's natural supplements for those. I started reading, obviously, then I start working out, water, all the things that I had to do to get healthy. And then one summer, we had a thing where Rural Affairs comes and they do like a tilling and you get all the garden stuff and you can start your own garden. And I did a garden. And till that point, I never really got into gardening. I didn't I didn't know nothing about gardening. But that connection that I had, having to weed it every day, water it, take care of it, and then pick it, and then bring it into my home and make something out of it, or eat it in a salad, it really changed my life. It made me think about how disconnected from food I was, and why was I stress eating? Why was I putting all these bad things in there? And it just really was like, holy smokes, you could actually have a lifestyle like this. You could, really change your diet. So I started looking at our traditional foods. We had already always had buffalo, but I started adding deer. I started adding, we're Dakota, we're wild rice people. And in squash, I started adding all these traditional foods into our diet. And my family, since I'm the cook at the time, my family was like, I guess. And so I was like, well, we're going to sub this. We're not going to have sugar. We're going to have this. And so my family just kind of went around with the ride, and they actually turned out to really like it. And they asked me, I I live in Sergeant Bluff now, and they're still in Santee, and they always ask, like, when are you coming back, when are you going to make this, or what's that recipe? And so they got into it. And so I tell my story because I think it's intimidating when we look at tribal foods, when we look at gardening, when we look at canning, because then when you start gardening, you want to can it, right? You want to preserve it. It's almost like you don't want that last little item to deteriorate until the next year. It's like a fresh thing, so you want to keep it. And now that I think about it, these are all the things that my grandmother did. These are all the things that past generations did. But we've become so far disconnected from it, we don't do it no more. It's almost like an ancient concept, or people are like, what do you mean can? What do you mean garden? What do you mean? They don't have that connection anymore. So I tell my story to people. One, if you have high blood pressure, diabetes, any kind of thing that you really need to fix or you want to fix, you can fix it. You have to listen to the doctor to get back on track, but you can fix it naturally. You just got to research it. Two, if you want to get into plant medicine, tribal foods, gardening, but you're scared or you're intimidated, do it one step at a time. It's overwhelming if you try to go full force. And then three, make a goal. My personal goal every year is to do a new food and to do a new plant. And just keep building on. Over the years, it goes further and further. And you'll see some pictures later on, but I was fortunate enough to have the chance to work with her name is Dr. Terry Mariska. She is Mohawk. She is a world-renowned plant specialist. And she is a full-fledged medical doctor. She actually has a whole thing that she does at University of Washington in Seattle. And she's just this really cute elder. She is just a beautiful person. She would bring her in to work with our medical students. But I had asked her, I said, I'm still kind of learning about plant medicine. I'm really trying to expand my knowledge. What tips could you give me? What could you do? And she's like, oh, it's simple, Janelle. When you accept them, they accept you. You have to build your relationship with them. I can't tell you nothing. Such and such can't tell you nothing. And so-and-so can't tell you you're doing it wrong either. Only they can make that decision. And when she met them, that's what she meant, our plant relatives. And when Brady was talking, we have to look at them as a being. They are a being. They're a living being. They're our relatives. And so as soon as she said that, I went hiking with my friend in the mountains. We were looking for wild mushrooms. We didn't find them. We found strawberries, and I finally found nettle. But when she said that, I was almost like making a prayer in my head, offering tobacco, doing my thing on my own. And it was funny because after that, it's amazing how I could only identify in the wilderness or just driving along a car just a few plants. But after she had said, once you accept them and they accept you and you build that relationship, now I'm able to spot more and more plants. And as time goes on and I get more connected and I'm walking along the gravel road on the res or in the fields, I feel like I'm connecting more and more with them. And so with this theme and this talks, I wanted to incorporate not only with our plant medicine, but it all interties together. The late John Trudell. And he says, I am just a human being trying to make it in a world that is rapidly losing its understanding of human being. And what did I say? That we're so far disconnected that gardening, plant medicine, even us seeing a relationship with them as a being, we're so far disconnected that we're losing it. And those were our key concepts of being Native people, being these tribal people. We used to be able to talk to animals. That isn't some fairy tale story. That's truth. And we used to talk to them all the time, our plant relatives. That isn't a fairy tale. And if you go into a field, you could talk to them, and you can accept them, and they can accept you. But he was an activist, he was a poet, he was a songwriter, he was active. And I'm proud that he was a Santee Sioux Nation tribal member. And so I wanted to give him a tribute. And so, looking at human rights, because I wanted to intertwine that into this lecture, and that's our tribal flag, how it's defined as it is an inherent universal right of behaviors because we simply exist, often protected by laws, state and national, regardless of ethnicity, sex, religion, and any other demographic. It is supposed to be a universal, inherent right protected by states and national. Now we know that's changing, right? We know that. Trying to get away, I'm not going to go into that, but we both know. But it is our inherent right as tribal people, as nations, to build that connection. We have that right. We have always had that right. It's been in our DNA. So along activism, I'm bringing up the American Indian movement because we know the history. We know those rights were taken away. And we know that a movement caused us to, their main mission and purpose in life was that we could be heard, we could have those rights restored. And it did create the Indian Religious Freedom Act. And that picture is my mother, Linda Whipple, holding my sister, Bernie Whipple. She was on the longest walk, and she walked with her to DC. And so they actually sent that to me, like, I think it was last week. I said, I need that picture. My mom was a part of the movement. They came to Omaha when she was 19 years old. She was having a life crisis. She told her mom, I'm jumping on the bus and I'm going with them. And she went with them. She has her own stories that I told her she should write down because there's things she's been through that I couldn't even imagine. And that was all so we could say a prayer. That was all so we could have connections to our plants, to our medicines, and practice our spirituality. And so, you know, we have human rights, and they wanted to make sure that that was heard. And that's what John was fighting for. And so with that, plant medicine. So the way I look at it is we were the first scientists. We were the first doctors. There is a plant or a food for every type of pain, every type of thing you could think of. And I really love attending those like summits, those conferences. I learned and network, and I love talking to elders because they're telling me more and more. One famous one that I know, he's really traditionally knowledgeable on everything, but he really talks about the Star Nation and our plant medicines is Ed Star. I love hearing Ed Star stories. But one thing that they bring it back to is reestablishing our connections. Because like I said, it was more of a trial and error, and you know, they have centuries and centuries and centuries of knowledge. And what even the most, so like Terry Mariska's probably late 70s maybe, and she's really good health. She takes really good care of herself. But she has elders that she goes to who are like in their 90s, almost 100. And she even learns from them. You know, I consider Terry this knowledgeable person, but she'll tell me things that she learned from her elders. So could you even imagine what our ancestors had knowledge of? And so this is the sprout that I was talking about where you could saute that up almost like asparagus. But it's hard to talk about plant medicine and not talk about food because they go hand in hand and they help heal us in all capacities. And so I would encourage everyone that if you have tribal elders or you have anyone that you know with plant medicine knowledge, I would encourage you to start really getting to know what plants you have in your area. I'll go walk around in the fields of Santee out in the country and I discover something new all the time. And there's things that I didn't even know we had 5 years ago. So with that, there is something that my friend told me that she learned from one of her elders. So we have a lot of things on our lands plants and medicines and foods. And I feel like every year it's growing and growing and growing. However, I can tell you that when COVID hit, it was almost like the choke cherries were gone. It was almost like the sage was gone. It was almost like our plant relatives knew something was going on. And then as soon as we kind of came out of, the depths of COVID, you could start to see things coming back. And I was told by my friend, she said that when a tribal nation is utilizing those medicines, when they're praying, they're going to start coming back and flourishing. And so it's something to think about, and maybe you can, when you make that connection back home to your tribe, to your plants, because every reservation has their own set of plants that grow in that region, to see if they'll come back more and more and more. So when you talk about plant medicine, there's a protocol. In our traditions, there's a protocol for everything. And when you go against those protocols, you're starting to deteriorate your own tribal identity. And so when, let's say you decide you're going to go into plant medicine and you want to go harvest. If you step foot on a reservation, some tribes, TIPO stands for Tribal Historical Preservation Office. There are certain tribes, like I know Santee, their TIPO office has made codes and laws that only tribal members can pick. So you want to be aware of whose reservation you're going to, and you want to be sure that you have a tribal member of that reservation you're going with. One, they might have a code or a law protecting their natural resources from overharvesting or coming on their lands. Two, you should just want to be respectful to give that. When I worked in Washington and I lived in Washington, there was the Nez Perce, there was Spokane, there was Kalispell, and Colville. They were surrounding the city of Spokane. Now, I had built a relationship with the Spokane tribe, and I had built a relationship with their actual initiative program. But and they would invite me to their tribal things, and I would go, but I always made sure that I had a tribal member with me, because even though I was personally invited by multiple tribal members to go pick on their lands, I felt as a visiting guest, it wasn't my right to go pick on their lands without a tribal member. And so I caution everybody, if you're gonna go pick, make sure one, you're invited, make sure two, that you're knowing the land so you don't get hurt. Like our kids went picking, and they had told us that if any were allergic to bees, to maybe stay in the van because that was high infested of bees. And just, you really have to be careful, because you have to be aware of your surroundings. When that comes to harvesting, different tribes have different ways they harvest. One, you should never pull out of the root. So, two, some tribes offer tobacco. Some tribes just do the prayer. Some do both. Some do a song. I went to one where you had to bring somebody and you had to explain who that person was, because that's part of their tradition. Another one, we sang songs. We sang prayer songs. So be careful when you harvest. Make sure you're going with somebody who knows how to harvest. And this is a really uncomfortable topic, but women aren't supposed to pick certain plants and medicines at certain times, and I'll just leave it at that. But as a woman, you should be able to talk to who you're going with, because that's other tribes' ways too. So be cautious when you're doing that. And the initiative, food sovereignty, plant medicine, are really coming in full force in Indian country, and I love it. I love that tribes are really making that initiative to try to bring back our foods and our and our traditions. They're planning, some are going into like the beginning of stages where they're planning the medicines, they're planning the foods. Some are starting to, they've already been growing them, so now they're going into how do we process them? How do we keep them? How do we make the different things? And Spokane is, there's a few tribes in Washington. One is, I want to say Nisqually, but I could be wrong. But I know there's two tribes on the coastal side of Washington that are in compacts with IHS. So they have an alternative. So if you go to the doctor and you say, I want to try traditional tribal medicine first before, or I want to do both, they have experts that are able to know both medical side and medicinal plant medicine side, and they're able to combine both. And they have all kinds of, I didn't get to go on that trip, but I seen the pictures and I was very envious of my coworkers, but rooms full of plants, salves, tinctures, teas, you name it. And that was the IHS clinical facility. So some tribes are really leading the path to how to incorporate these into our lives. So I found that's a plant I found on the left, that's wild roses. I was happy to find them because, like I said, every year I try to find a couple I didn't know. That's mullein and euro, that's on the right, that's on the trip. You'll see later on pictures. That is what I found when I was on the Spokane Res. We were actually there looking up different plants. Here I found euro and mullein, and I said, I said to my friend, I was like, I'm gonna harvest some of these, and she's like, go ahead. Mullein's good for, I have really bad allergies, and mullein's good for allergies, sinuses. I use it in a tea, but you could roll it up and like smoke it. And then euro can be used in a tea. You can make salves, tinctures. So in wild roses, you can make teas. You can do face stuff. You can do creams and lotions. So those are also. So with plant medicine, right? You have different processes. You have where you go into the wild, into the wilderness, and you harvest, you pick, you do all the traditional protocols. But then what do you do with that? So the top one, that is bare root cough drops. We did do that for a workshop for our students. I will have to say you have to have a candy thermometer and it has to temperate. We ended up with bare root cough syrup. But they were happy. It worked. It worked. It smelled good. But and we only had hot burners because we were in our student center. But yeah, make sure that it's temping above candy temperature. Then you'll get the full effect of the cough drops. But if you don't temp it right, you end up with cough syrup. It still works very well. The students loved it. That is, you see it up here. I'm a nettle teacher. I love nettle too. That's also a plant that resonates with me. So you can make nettle and tinctures without alcohol. You use soy. And so I let it sit, and then you strain it through cheesecloth a bunch of times, and you end up with tincture. So I have some you can sample. So you just take the dropper, put it on your finger, look at it's just the soy glycerin and the nettle. And that's all that is, and you let it sit over time, and then you strain it. In the middle, I didn't make this spray up here, but I do make it. That came from a gift from another herbist. It's tangerine spray. Tangerine is good for ADD, ADHD, also again allergies, sinuses. So you just spray it, breathe it in and out. She tried it. Did you like it?
I did like it.
Yeah. So you would just spray 2 to 4 sprays, inhale it. It's also just like this nice, clean, fresh smell that kind of picks you up. I used to spray it in the mornings. With essential oils, you know, you can do roller balls. I have lavender, headache relief, and mental clarity. I have really bad migraines that go inside with my allergies, and I can tell you that yes, the headache relief does work. It's not going to instantly take away your headache. You have to take your medicine if you have migraines, but what it's going to do is you're going to feel the cooling effect of where you hurt at, and it's going to ease the pain. It's not going to make it go away, but it's going to ease the pain. And then this is, I have an Alaska doctor that I worked with in Washington, and he has his own concoction called Dr. G salve. And it's kind of like this all-around type of salve. He calls it the Indian needles corn. I use that as the salve workshop that I use, but I was told by him never to sell it, and I will never sell it, not that recipe. So I like to use that to just kind of introduce people to, like, it has 5 different plants, introduce them to those plants, what are the benefits of them, and then like show them the infused oil, and then we do the beeswax melting, and then we make it, then people get to pour their own salve. And so I like to do that workshop. I did one at Humanarium with Healing Ribbons last fall, was it? Yeah, last fall. And then the bottom is, I was trying to make, so when I do presentations, I brought a new recipe of lip balm. I think I have like maybe 40 in there. It's kind of come first serve. First come, first serve at the end. You guys can try, but I used to do tea. I made my own sleepy time version tea, but I wasn't able to do that. But that's tea, and then these are more teas. In the middle is my favorite tea. It grows at home. It's called Chayaka. I think it's just like a spearmint plant. And then another workshop we did our own homemade lavender lemonade. Lemonade from scratch, and then we infused it with lavender. So these are different types of things you can do with plant medicine. One of the examples when I do workshops, I will say to people like, here's the plant, so this is peppermint. So if I'm facilitating a workshop to people who might not have any knowledge of what that plant is, this is an example of how peppermint would be. So I would go through it. It's good for pain relief. It's good for stress. It's a cold infection booster. It treats migraines. It helps with stress, lungs, swelling, pain. And then how can you use it? Because people were like, well, what do you do with it? You can make your tea. You can put it in, you can make infusions and do lotion, salve, shampoos, conditioners, skincare, oils, body serums, lotion. So I would go through on how that is, and that's just one example of, look at how many benefits for that one plant. Look at how many things you can do for that one plant. So you can be making your own shampoo and conditioner and your own body wash and skincare products. Go ahead, and if you want that recipe, there was a summit on the Coeur d'Alene Res, and they had like a tea bar with, I think, 4 or 5 different types of teas, and then all the plants, and so you go through and scoop and make your own teas. That's a good cold and flu one. And it says equal parts, so if you do 1 tablespoon, then you would do it for all that. So you can go ahead and take a picture of that tea, and that's a good tea. You guys want to take a picture and try that at home? Then I was so happy. It's up there. I haven't done anything with it, but I was so happy this year I got vitamin. I had been looking for it, and I finally got it.
This fireweed, I don't know anything about it. I never remember it.
Oh, it's so it's good for stomach ulcers, colds, helps with inflammation. You can eat it raw, you can use it cooked, you can make a tea, tincture, salve. It also helps with migraines too. I think it's because it's the inflammation. It helps with that. So migraines are usually because you're. So I ask though that no one takes everything up here people can have pictures of, but except for this slide because these have students in it. So one thing that I wanted to also bring is when I worked for Washington State University, we were a satellite campus in Spokane, and it was a professional college, so we dealt with a lot of pharmacy students, medical students, graduate students, and one thing that they did, they had a program called RISE, and if you know anyone who wants to be a medical doctor, I highly recommend that you apply to a couple of their programs because they help walk you through MCAT, they help give you some more tips on your bio classes. But we did T-bars with them. And then the bottom part was full-fledged doctors. They had like some kind of world conference at Spokane, and I wasn't even invited to it. And then they showed up and they said they were looking for my supervisors who had prior engagements. And my supervisors were like, "Can you run this SAB workshop?" So these were world-renowned doctors that came for that conference, and they learned how to make that Dr. P SAB. And then right there is we talked about the Hawaiian Conference Encore. You know, we did a thing on Nahashni, and I'll talk about Nahashni in a minute, but we did tangerine spray as an exercise that intertwined with the Nahashni thing. So Nahashni was started by Dr. Robbie Paul, who was in the nursing department at Washington State University in Spokane. And she seen that they were not recruiting natives to their nursing program. And so she decided to start a recruiting technique to incorporate, because Washington has like 29 federal recognized tribes, 3 state tribes, and like 2 unidentified tribes. They're big. And she wanted to know why we didn't have Native students in the nursing program. So she started this brilliant program that catered from 9th to 12th grade students from all over Washington. And they would come to Spokane for 2 weeks, and they would learn about nursing. And from that program, it grew and grew and grew. So when I came on with them in 2022 as the program coordinator, we targeted all the tribes in Washington, and we accepted, I think we accepted 20, was all we had money for. But they were exposed to all types of careers and all types of things. But at this time, we had been doing workshops towards the students, faculty, and staff about plant medicine and how to, my supervisor used to use the word parallel with Western medicine. And as I said, like tribes are really making that way, they're integrating it into their IHSs. And so we knew that probably the majority, and this is a bad assumption, but probably the majority of high school students weren't ever exposed to plant medicine. And so what we did, and one of my main personal missions and purpose was how do you create a curriculum in a summer camp for high school students incorporating plant medicine, tribal foods, especially with teenagers that haven't been exposed to it. And I think we did a pretty good job. And I think that we had, so many people from all the surrounding reservations willing to just come in and work with our kids. We would present at conferences, and they were so happy to hear that we were doing almost like an indigenous curriculum that talked about sciences, that talked about math, that talked about all these things, because we were the first doctors, we were the first scientists. And so what you'll see is like these are actually pictures of them making medicine. They're making salves. And I have a couple salves if you want to try one. One's cottonwood, and cottonwood is really a good pain reliever. I seen one that was this huge gallon that Terry brought. She literally just kept putting like cottonwood after cottonwood off all these years, and it was with olive oil and it was infused, and that was probably better than any 800 ibuprofen you would ever take. And so they made their own cottonwood salve, and then they made Dr. T salve, and then in the right, Rural Affairs has a program where they do different things. So I was pretty happy that they brought me in to work with the Santee kids, and we did rollerballs. And rollerballs they use essential oils and maybe some might argue that's not plant medicine, but it's exposing them to something they didn't know about and showing them that there are holistic ways to integrate things into their lives. So I have 5 minutes left. So my final thoughts are, this is another quote by Trudell. We have to reestablish our identity. He says we have to understand who we are and where we fit in the natural order of the world, because our oppressor deals in illusions. And I thought that was a great quote to end with, because whether you grew up traditional, you're a fluent speaker, and you are a food expert and plant medicine expert, whether you're just now starting, whether you just now you're Native American and you want to learn, you have to start somewhere. And if you are an expert, I humbly ask that you share your knowledge and you help somebody maybe find their journey. And I was glad to be brought here, and I hope that maybe I inspired somebody who's just wanting to learn, that that it's okay just to start learning. You have to start somewhere. And you just keep going on and on and on, and it will build and build and build. And the last plant left that's on the Spokane, that's called, I thought it was belly buttons, but it's Benjamin buttons. And my friend, her advocate, she's like, it's Benjamin buttons, not belly buttons. I said, oh, okay. So we picked that day for them. We took our Nahashmi kids, and they have this beautiful setup, and they're like, we're so humble, we're just starting, but they have the house, they have a full industrialized kitchen, it's a nonprofit, it's their own tribal program, and that's all they do is they just work with food sovereignty issues and plant medicine, and they do the beginning stages all the way to the processing, the canning, the making of the stuff, and they're really trying hard to get an IHS compact. And the woman who runs it, she's a well-known doctor. She's great, and my friend would take me up there. We took our rides and the Hashmi kids to that reservation, and we picked, and those are good retinol. They're full of vitamin C and vitamin A. And so you can make them into a tea, you can make them into a cream, a serum, and they're really good. They have a lot of retinol, so they would make great facial stuff. So Pidamya, if you have any more questions, like you don't want to ask in front of the group, feel free to email me. That's my school email. Or if you have a question, or
I can run around with the microphone.
But we'll open it, almost perfect timing, I was just a minute shy. But we'll open it to any kind of questions or comments or thoughts.
What do you think is the biggest challenge in trying to break generational trauma when you're trying to incorporate plant medicine and more healthy habits?
The biggest challenge is because of generational trauma, it's almost caused us to want to come away from being who we naturally are in our DNA. You might hear those words like, oh, they're just sacred, or oh, they're too much, or oh, they're that way. Because generational trauma has caused us not to have that every day. And when it comes to somebody who might have grown up in a traditional house, they know things. And so, sometimes we really tore down, like I said, people will say, those are just fairy stories, or those aren't real. We know in our hearts they're real. That's who we are. And so working with people, even some of my family members, just try it. If you don't like it, that's not you. I'm not going to argue with you. At least try it. And once they get out of their comfort zone and they let their guard down and they try it, they like it. It's in our blood, it's in our DNA, it's who we are. So I feel like we are our own responsibility to our family. So my biggest thing would be saying, start with yourself first. Fill yourself fully, as much as you can, and start that connection. And then maybe incorporate one family, two family. And then sooner or later, it's going to evolve over years and years. It takes probably a lifetime, but just start with yourself first. And I had a lot of trauma. I had things I had to deal with. And it took a long time. I was a very angry person. My friends know that conversation. She's still angry, but I'm sorry to kill, but I mean, I was pretty angry. And I'm trying really hard to not be an angry person. I want to be calm. I want to be healthy. And it's a day at a time sometimes. But start with yourself and then start helping others. Good question. You can.
I like what you said earlier about when they said, "Oh, that's fairy tale," but for us, we know it's not. We like that. I like that you, and I think we should, as a people, normalize again our ways, right? Normalize how we see the world, how we operate, our foods, right? Because these were here first. These were the actual real pharmacies available to us. And so normalizing our culture and the way it was and the way it should be. Because we were here first. And I think we've lost that. And it's just normalizing it makes it safer for people to do. And so they don't feel embarrassed about it. So normalizing it, how would you help us to normalize what we're moving back to, our food systems?
Well, there are things that, okay, so let's talk about flour. Maybe you bake a lot, maybe you cook a lot, but flour, right? And foods are getting so costly now. But flour, you can make Titimsila flour, which is a wild turnip. And you go to Oglala country and it's Titimsila country up there. But yeah, so you can take that and you can make that flour. And one thing that I really, really want to try is, but I haven't yet, so cattails are so much in Santee. They're like all over the place. You can make a flour out of them. And I'm going to get it this year. It's coming up. You got to hit it at the right time. But it's simple things like that. No more flour. Just say, I'm not going to buy flour. And you start buying, you start maybe making Titimsila flour, even wild rice. You make a flour out of that. And say, okay, maybe instead of sugar, I'm going to use maple syrup, real maple syrup, and real honey. And it's just little changes like that I think will help families. One thing I found with my family is we're squash eaters. We love squash all year round. That's how I'm able to trick, and they love wild rice. They're just, like I said, DNA. We're Dakota, so they love their wild rice. Just incorporating those two foods in my family house, I'm happy. In Buffalo, we love that. All of my family loves buffalo. I am thankful for that. But you said a good word, normalizing. I have, not just in the world revitalization, I think that's an important word, it's a key word in our communities, but a lot of things never died, we just put it on the back burner. So I like that word instead, normalizing your traditions. You don't need a special event to wear a ribbon skirt. It's common summer, wear ribbon skirts all year round, and if people say, do your sacred, say I know. I mean, it's just, just start doing it, just there's no reason why you can't. But yeah.
Hi. It's so good to hear you talk, and I'm so grateful to be here, and I just want to say thank you for everything that you share and give. I'm a pharmacist, and I feel like I don't know anything about traditional plant medicines, which I definitely want to learn more about that. But like being native and going through and learning more about like Western medicines, that's kind of where like my head goes to. So I just wanted to ask about your time in Spokane and working with Dr. Terry, I can't remember her name. Mariska. Did they, and when you worked with like different health profession students, did they talk anything about like drug-drug interactions, or was that like hit on at all? Because I guess what I want to share is, you know, a lot of our medications, like Western medications that we have, are derived from, you know, different plants, like foxtail, you know, can cause serious like cardiac toxicities, and they use that to make the drug digoxin, or things like St. John's wort. That's another like more herbal product that can be potent to help with depression, but can have like different drug-drug interactions with other agents that people might take. Was that something that, and it's okay if you don't know, but I just was kind of curious.
So the only thing that I know for sure is I know blood thinners was huge. So I know there was a situation with one of our coworkers' friends. He was on blood thinners, and unfortunately he couldn't. Like he could do salve or maybe like tangerine oil. There were certain like medicines or teas that, you know, we had enough doctors where they were like, no. Like blood thinners are a whole nother ballgame, and so I think it depends on the severity of that. And when you research your plants, it will tell you, like St. John's wort. So I am on high blood pressure. Like I'm still working on that, and I'm cautious. Like here's the other thing. I thought I was like ready to go to the nut hut in December. Like it was bad. I was on this whole like, what am I, bipolar? Am I like mental? Am I depressed? Like I was bad. And come to find out, I had no vitamin B12 and no potassium. Like I was depleted. And when I found those out and I looked at what those cause, like it can cause depression, it can cause anxiety, and I never had anxiety in my life, and I was having major anxiety, and it can cause almost like a bipolar effect. And so they pumped me with potassium, they pumped me with vitamin B12. I went and got liquid B12. I went and got more vitamins and more plants. And but I was glad that I looked up St. John's wort because it interacts with some blood pressure. And I am no doctor. I just did go there. But I did buy ashwagandha to help that. But that's another thing that's crucial is make sure your vitamins are intact, because that's a real thing. Like vitamin B12, potassium, and magnesium, man, those really, if you don't have them, they make you literally crazy, and you think you're something else, but really you just have no vitamins. So with that holistic approach, make sure you're going to the doctor and you're checking all your levels. But yeah, some do. I would just say, like, when you're researching that, see, and if it's very severe, maybe, like, step back from it, because, like, I was on, before I went down in my A1C, I seen hibiscus was good for blood sugar, and I drank hibiscus tea, and I was on metformin, and I didn't go crazy. I thought that was pretty safe, and it was. So I think there's just certain things where you use caution.
And I just want to say thank you to you, because you, earlier in your presentation, had said, you know, like, work with your doctor, but, you know, it's good to incorporate these traditional medicines. And I guess that's kind of like a hope, is that I feel like there's not as much focus on what these traditional medicines do, because we put so much of our stake in like Western medicine. But I think that, you know, it's just as important in a person's, what's important to them, you know, using those traditional medicines alongside and making sure we do that in a safe way. So I just wanted to to ask again because my firm is a spring, but thank you.
Oh yeah, and argue with IHS, argue with the doctors. I mean, they'll put you on medicine your whole life. like there's alternatives, and I think that needs to be known.
Okay, just probably a couple more questions. We have one here and one here, and then.
Yes. Okay, this works. So first off, I'd like to thank you, Janelle, for having this talk. It was really eye-opening, and I can't thank you enough for being my teacher in the tribal law the tribal nation building class. It's really engaging for that. For me, as someone who is from an immigrant background, living in the United States and engaging with American medicines, and then having the opportunity to be at this talk and learning more about indigenous medicine practices, my question comes as this. With American medicine and the treatment of the symptoms, not the underlying causes of these problems, how would you say indigenous medicine works in solving those problems, and also how would it reconcile with Western medicine and its engagement with just solving the symptoms and not the underlying causes of said symptoms?
I think you have to address the cause. So why did I become 311 pounds? I was not exercising. I didn't know I was a stress eater, but I'm a stress eater. And I didn't watch my portions. And every year I gained 10 to 15, 20 pounds. I was like, I'll lose it, until it became where I couldn't do that. So I had to ask myself, why am I stress eating? I had to ask myself, why am I unhappy? And I decided to drink a big old Coke and candy bar. You know, like these are real issues. And it was because, one, I was disconnected to my relationship with foods and plants. Two, I wasn't using the traditional knowledge or normalizing the knowledge of our healthy foods and putting like big cheeseburgers into me, you know. But I was doing that daily. Like, today I went to McDonald's on the way. I haven't had McDonald's for like a long time. So you have to really get to the root of the problem. And what she said about generational trauma, it's probably a trauma. You're coping with food, just like you cope with alcohol or drugs. Some people use food as that to whatever they're feeling bad about. So you have to work with that first. And then you can get into the other things. Once you start healing yourself and healing those issues and those traumas, then you can start really, because you're right, they're masking the symptoms. You're not having to change your habits, your life, your mindset. And we have to start normalizing. I haven't worked out in a long time, but I used to really work out all the time. And that release of endorphins and that dopamine, that's a real thing. And we used to be walking people all the time. That's how we got around. But now, you know, we're not. And so, again, there's nothing more I love than walking on a gravel road. It just takes everything away. And that walk could be fast, it could be a jog, it could be whatever your body's at. But that's also healing yourself. So my answer to you is you have to first find out why you're suffering from whatever you are and really work with trying to heal yourself. And then you can get into the other issues, the other things that help.
Thank you so much for being here and talking to us. I just wanted to say I love plants, and I just wanted to ask about like your thoughts about, I know the plants you shared pictures of, they were like, you had gone someplace to harvest, and I just wanted to know your thoughts about like gardening or certain, you know, plants maybe, I guess, like, you know, where the plant chooses to be versus like you put it in your garden. I just wondered if you had any thought or philosophy about that, and was looking at your pictures of like going out to harvest, and I just know I see, again, I love plants, but like the trauma the plants are going through from like the Roundup that is sprayed all over everything, and I just wondered if you had any thoughts to share.
So, I mean, obviously you always want to go out somewhere, but you know, due to being in the city and stuff. But like, okay, so one plant that's in the South is calendula. I don't have access to calendula in Santee because it doesn't grow there. To my knowledge, it doesn't grow in Santee. It grows all over in Spokane. But I found calendula seed from my friends, and I'm gonna grow that. I have a little balcony in my apartment, so I'm gonna build like this little garden of like things. But I mean, I need to make sap all year round, and the chances of me going to Washington to get calendula is not realistic. So I'm going to plant a little thing of calendula, and I feel like, again, it's more of a connection. So I feel like if you want to go and find peppermint and plant peppermint in your garden and take care of peppermint and make peppermint tea because it helps you with stress, I think that's okay. I think that's fine. I would only say, like, there's just certain things that I think maybe not be okay, like, but those are things that like are our medicines. I didn't talk a lot. I talked about plant medicine. I didn't talk about specifically native medicine. So you know what I'm saying? Like if you were to plant spearmint for spearmint tea, if you were to plant things, I think when you're building that relationship, and then you go make a cup of tea because it's helping you, or you decide you want to try a tincture, that's perfectly, yeah. I think that's, you know, your connection there. Yes.
You made a very good point about taking medicine. My name is Myra Esau. I'm urban native, been urban 3 generations. And I think that there may be a lack of education for the native community on the Western medicine, because the average reading level in America is second grade. Do you, from your perspective, do you feel, because I see a lot of programs about how to eat healthy, but in an urban environment, like you said, you need to take your medicine to get healthy, to have a healthier way of life. But do you see that, a lack of how we could educate the urban? Because the growing and everything is great, but in an urban environment, that's very hard. And to find the time, the plants, and because we are urban, we do have that generational trauma being removed from families, and that understanding, like you said, oh, you're too sacred, or, oh, you're city Indian, you guys don't know what you're doing. We hear it all the time. But I was just wondering if, do you think that if they were more like educated about the medicine that they're taking? Because the doctors do tell you, you know, you're diabetic and you need this medicine to help you. But I don't think there's a true understanding in the community about how bad that medicine, even though that medicine is there to help you, it also is eating your pancreas, your liver, your kidney, and they tell you that, and you know, just in general. But do you think there maybe should be a little bit more focus on getting themselves to get to the level where they don't need that medicine? Because you can't just stop your medicine.
Yeah.
And a lot of them aren't.
I think, well, I worked briefly in Omaha for a minute. But one thing that I seen was lack of nutritional education available for urban populations.
Yeah.
The one thing that I would encourage you, you know, because we all have phones, is I will give a shout out. The Punkas do in the garden, like they'll do in the summertime, they'll come and do the gardening baskets. And I would encourage as many of you to go as possible, because I got some in Niobrara when I was home during the summer, and they do provide a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. And maybe an Omaha entity can do, what can you do with that, right? So you have squash, Well, you could actually make squash and a meat, or you could make, instead of eating spaghetti, you could use spaghetti or zucchini noodles, right? You could just, or make a lasagna out of them. And I think that's the part of the diabetes part that we miss so much of, is that healthy nutrition foods. Being able to like cut out pasta and cut out rice, and how do we substitute it, right? And then like groceries are insanely expensive. So how do we help impoverished communities? And it's that, right? If we have those, and like commodities are trying, but there's no like cooking class. Like I know they offer them on the reservation, but I don't know if there's entities here. And so I think the important part is like maybe like the organizations in Omaha, maybe somewhere someone can offer healthy nutrition and alternatives to the urban community and do it multiple times. So if you missed it, you can go again. Or you can keep going and going and seeing what's in there. But I would recommend at least going and getting those baskets from the Punka tribe, and then you could probably look at everything up on Google and then seeing like, what can I make with this that helps with those alternatives? Because squash and zucchini are really healthy, no sugar, and they're good pasta substitutes.
Janelle, I was wondering if you could like, maybe family members, some could have one pot, and then they grow tomatoes, another family member has maybe a small pot, and then they grow something they can, and then share.
Yeah, and it'd be nice. I don't know if anybody offers those like gardening kits, but it would be nice if like there was some kind of resource.
Yeah. Omaha does have a lot of community gardens all around. There's some up here in Dundee, there's some over in North Omaha, there's one downtown. And usually, like, they're more than happy to give away whatever they have access of, or if you want something, they'll give it to you. Because I remember one day they gave us a lot of, I don't even remember what they're called, but they're kind of like a potato, and they grow deep in the soil, but they're like really starchy. But I didn't know how to cook them. But they gave us like those, yeah, sunchokes. Yep, that's what they were. Yeah.
You can make a like a pickle. I had that. Lestina works for the Urban Health Coalition, and I know one of your workers, what they provide with resources. I mean, connections.
Yeah.
I think if you call there, they'll be able to tell you where some of these gardenings are, or maybe be able to help direct you.
Well, Janelle, we do have to take the soon-to-be Dr. Whipple to a well-earned dinner. We wanted to gift her a blanket.
Okay. Thank you.
So on behalf of the Native American Studies program, I know some of our friends that come from Winnebago made a kind of a long journey. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to be here. It's good to see some of my old friends, Jacob and Alex. But thank you all for coming here. It's a great privilege to be able to put these lectures together and to have somebody as well informed and so forth as Janelle. We're going to have Douglas sing a traveling song. And as Janelle said, she does have, just please don't take my hat, of course. But she does have some samples, lip balm and so forth. It's kind of first come, first served. And then, so thank you all. Douglas, thank you for your time. And do a traveling song. Make sure everybody gets home safely. We really appreciate you coming out this evening. So I'll ask you to stand one more time.
Hey!
Okay, and with that, I want to thank you all again for taking the time to come out tonight, and also to let you know that Saturday, April 19th, at the Field House is the Wobbly Sampa Power. And so that goes, I think, grand entry starts at 1 p.m. and goes until, I think, 8. But we hope that you're able to join us. I know that the Intertribal Student Council worked very hard, along with Cornelius and so forth, to put this together. And it's, these are trying times, and be able to put the power together. Thank you all, and have a safe journey home, and try some of the chapters.
Yeah, we did summer and fall.
Thank you.
Yeah.